So how do truck drivers live? Little small space like this. Must be miserable, right? Not as bad as you think it is. Let me show you how it is in the truck here. So how's a truck driver hack it doing the overnight camping in a small space like a sleeper? Well, you meet the bare essentials is what you do. So what are the bare essentials? Maybe it's like the core needs, rule of three. Shelter, protection from elements, extreme cold, heat, rain, don't forget snow. Water, crucial for hydration, about 1 gallon a person per day. Fire, for warmth, signaling. I don't know who I'd be signaling. Cooking and water purification. And of course, you got to have food, energy source, though less immediately crucial than others. Yeah, that depends on who you are. I get pretty hungry. I don't know if this video is going to be that extreme, but we're definitely going to meet these needs. I mean, there's the minimum amount of things that you need to be able to enjoy or at least make the best of staying in a little sleeper like this. Things like power management, a way to cook, food, water, entertainment, places to put your stuff, um, you know, more than just what you can bring to the truck, but things that are already installed in the truck. So let's go through the checklist here and see if we meet all that in the truck I'm in. My opinion, I think the very first thing that most people would ask about, and by the way, truck drivers, they all know what the answer to all this is. But for those of you that don't drive truck, plenty of people have asked me questions that seem like a no-brainer to me, but if you don't drive it, you never stayed in one, then how would you know? So the number one thing I would ask if I wasn't a truck driver, it would be, how about privacy? I mean, really, this is your space, and you want to be able to do things like personal hygiene, maybe getting dressed or shaving, something like that. I mean, how do you get the privacy? Well, there's some pretty good curtains in here. I mean, these are blackout curtains that really do the job. You got the front curtains on the front windows, which they are magnetized together and they pretty much get all the light out. But if that's not enough, we have the curtains here in between the sleeper and the front of the truck, which is actually really effective. I mean, look at this light I have here. Look how dark it gets. I mean, that's awesome. And so it really is important to have your privacy and be able to live in your space where you don't have everybody staring in at you through the window. Next up, I think, is light. You need light. You can't sit in the dark and not be able to see. And so all the lighting in here is all ran off the batteries, which, like I said, that generator is like the heart of the whole thing. It keeps those batteries charged. I don't even have to think about it. And then you have your lights above where you cook or where a cubby is or where the bed is. So you can easily reach up and turn that off or turn it on. And so lights are important. How do you do power management? I mean, like electricity, like 110 electricity, 12 volts, the lighting, how do you power all that? Heating, cooling, how's all that powered? And so, I mean, this is a big one on the checklist, which is, in my case, a generator. But it's not a generator you get down at the Home Depot, something that you have to fill with gas and start it up and that kind of thing. It's built in on the truck. It's called an APU, and it's a diesel generator. The second thing I'm thinking is, you got to be able to keep food and drinks cold. I mean, preserve it, be able to have it. Well, that's obviously a refrigerator. Back in the day, we didn't have refrigerators. We had an ice chest with water everywhere and constantly having to buy ice. But most trucks nowadays have a little refrigerator and a little mini freezer. So the next stop is you got to be able to cook, right? So, we can bring the frying pans and a cook stove and that kind of thing. And I did that kind of thing back in the day. But nowadays, I just use the microwave. Well, how are you going to run a microwave without some kind of power source? Well, I said that earlier. You have the generator, but all the generator does is it keeps the batteries charged on the truck. The only other thing it does is it will run the AC. It actually has to have the generator for that. But 110 electricity, you have to use an inverter. And that'll give you 110 to where you can plug in like a microwave or a hot plate or a TV or something like that. And so an inverter is what you need. Next up on the list is you got to have a place to put all your stuff. I mean, anybody that's ever lived in a house or like had a roommate, or maybe you're just a messy person where for whatever reason, stuff's all over the place. You don't have a place to put things and, that just, you'd end up losing stuff and it gets in your way and that kind of thing. Well, You definitely got to have the bare minimum of storage to be able to put things away like clothes, bags, food, tools you may need, emergency things. And so cupboard space is really what it is. Next up, heating and air conditioning. So, I did say that the generator runs, to supply power for these types of things, but it can't do it on its own completely with the heating. The heating, well, it can, but for me, it doesn't. The heating is actually a little diesel heater and it actually burns diesel. And you have to basically get a little igniter in there, cherry red. That takes electricity to be able to do that, or it may be 12 volts. But at any rate, it uses power to be able to light that diesel and be able to keep it going to get the heater going. And then along with that, here's your AC. You've got to circulate the freon, just like in a regular car. It's the same thing with your house too. An air conditioning unit has freon that runs through, and it basically absorbs all the heat out, and it dispels all the heat from your space. Well, you need to have a generator or some kind of motor, something that turns RPMs to where it can actually pump the freon and keep it moving, and then also run all the fans. So truck camping, truck drivers don't call it that, but I know a lot of people know. Staying in the sleeper of a truck is called truck camping, but it's come a long ways. When I first got into truck driving, it was 2006, like I said, 24 years ago. And yeah, I think one of my first trucks that I drove for this guy, and it was a 1972 Mack. It was a log truck, and they had converted it over into like a road truck. Well, they put a sleeper on it, but it was nothing like this. It was one of those sleepers where basically you just jump through the cubby hole and it's just a bed, and that's it. No AC, no heater. Back then, you just idled the truck, which worked great for the heater, but didn't have an air conditioning. The heater would work, but the only thing is the smell of exhaust would kind of stink you out, gas you out. So I just put a lot of blankets on. Didn't have any lights or anything in it. Of course, we didn't have smartphone. I didn't have a smartphone back then, and so it wasn't charging ports or anything like that around. There wasn't anything. It was just a bed. That's it. So this is a far cry from that. Everything from microwave cooking to refrigerator, closet space, cubby holes, a generator, whatever you need. It's not too bad. It's actually really good. And these beds are not too bad. I get a pretty good night's sleep on these. So speaking of a pretty good night's rest, I think it's about time for that. And hopefully I've answered a lot of questions. If you got more, put them in the comments, and I will catch you guys next week.